This is Karen with newclevelandradio.net, and it's time for How to Super Age with Elise Marie Collins. And Elise, one of the things that I thought was exciting about your guest today is that she knows how to hack into happiness. And as we get older, there are a lot of us who walk around, oh, if I could just be happier. Well, we can be. And I'm hoping she's going to share the secret to that so that we can enjoy the journey that we're on. So tell us a little bit about her.
Well, what I know about Candice is she's a woman who likes to explore and study many subjects. Many of them are esoteric. She's very down to earth, very practical. She's a mom and she's got a great smile. You can see her there. She's kind of got a, she looks very happy, thinking of happiness. And I would love to start there. Keys to happiness as we age. One thing I do know is that we are actually happier when we age. And there's definitely, on a continuum, not everyone experiences aging in the same way. And yeah, we all have different trials and tribulations, but generally, and I'm saying this especially for younger people, that we actually do become happier and find more joy in life. I think the simple pleasures are easier to enjoy. So I'd love to hear, Candice, your take. Well, actually, before we say that, let's hear more about you, because I think you're a little bit more about how would you describe yourself. I know you have a lot of certifications and things, but tell us how you help people, what you do in the world, kind of orient us to you. And then if you have some words on happiness, and I can always remind you of the question.
Well, thank you so much. Um, my background is in East West medicine. My bachelor's degree is a pre-med degree in molecular and cellular biology. And I have a master's in acupuncture and Eastern medicine. And when I was first getting started, while I was still in acupuncture school, I was exposed to a personality typing system called the Enneagram. It was taught to us as the practitioner. It was called self-actualization for the practitioner. And the idea that the better you knew yourself, the more present you could be for other people. And I ended up falling in love with that idea and really became passionate about learning more about the Enneagram. So when I opened my acupuncture practice, I decided to have every patient take the personality type quiz at the first appointment, not really knowing where it would lead, but I just thought, maybe if they knew more about themselves, it would help them make some shifts. Maybe if I knew something about them going into it, we could have an easier rapport. And all of that was true and so much more. And what I ended up discovering was that by knowing the patient's personality type up front, this is a framework to look at the health picture. And when you're working with somebody in acupuncture, it's different than Western medicine because there's time for talking and you're interpreting what's going on in their life right now. Like, why are you here today? And so you can really adapt not only the treatment for what's going on today, but helping them see how their own personality type's perspective is shaping the attitude, the beliefs, the actions. And this became very clear over time that the different personality types, they do all of life a certain kind of way. It's not just one thing. It's like you're this type all over the place, including your attitude towards exercise, your attitude towards food or limiting food, your attitude towards rest, your attitude towards a willingness to go inward. All of that is connected to the personality type. And ultimately, that is where that happiness aspect comes out, is each of these 9 personality types actually has a limitation built in to the type that leads us away from happiness in a specific way. And we don't know about it. We don't realize it's there. We just keep doing it the way that feels natural and normal to us. And there is an obstacle kind of permanently in the way. And of course, the more stress there is in your life, the more active this sort of limited, no, it has to go this way attitude gets. So when you were saying how you notice that older people seem to be happier, I think once you get past the child rearing years and life gets, simpler and easier, you can kind of relax away from that thing that sort of wants to force everything. It's when you're under duress, it's like, I need it to go this way. But the way you believe it should go is actually not the way your happiness lives. It's actually in the other direction. So that's what I really like to show people is that if you're having a problem in your relationships, in your health, in your money, in your career, your personality type is at play in your attitudes and beliefs around what is happening. So, shifting the belief, shifting the perspective releases the tension in the story, and things start to flow and relax, which leads to happiness.
So how do we shift that perspective? How could someone do that today? Maybe, and do you do that with people online?
I
You know,
do. I have one-to-one appointments, Zoom calls like this, and I work with people in person. So I'm doing a lot more than acupuncture now. Now with this information, it's applicable all over the place. So the main thing to realize is that reptilian survival brain, that part of ourselves that's super invested in survival and scarcity, like, no, there's not enough to go. I got to hoard my stuff. I need to protect myself. All of those are underpinning the personality type's perspective. So really the shift starts there is, am I willing to say, I'm fine in this moment and I can trust that I can get myself through whatever I'm facing. It's a knee jerk, oh no, something's not going how I think it should go, and this is making me feel like I'm not okay, something's going to be horribly wrong. And actually noticing that that's the clenching feeling that you're having, breathing into that, letting that be there and just relax and reminding I'm okay. Let's see how this is going to play out. Maybe it's just going to go in my favor anyway. And so sort of reminding yourself not to dive in to a story, and to sort of hang back and ask more questions, stay relaxed, see if there's a way to find an easy resolution to this rather than assuming, I got to control it this way. So it's about self-trust ultimately and self-love. The more you find yourself worthy of love, the less you are reactive to what's going on around. The more you trust yourself, believe in yourself, the less reactive you are. And that kind of holds your personality type stable and your energy stable. And you're able to sort of meet the experience with some flow instead of limitation.
yeah. How do we let that love in? How that can, you also mentioned what I would describe as being counterintuitive and being able to pivot.
Yes.
So, how can our listeners get some of those tips right now? They might not even, maybe they're suffering from some of these these personality reptilian
Yeah.
brain things. What would you suggest to like as an overall strategy?
Yeah. So I've designed a graphic for each of the personality types that I call a mandala. And if you take the personality type quiz, I've got a free quiz online. The results page includes that mandala. And it's sort of two halves. The bottom half, it's a square, and the bottom half spells out exactly the architecture of that survival mind. I call that your primal persona. It's like when you're under duress, these are the factors that come out and are at play. And that's ultimately what I call a sabotage pattern. One of the factors in the mandala is your sabotage pattern, which is a one word summary of all of that bottom half. So you need to know what's my sabotage pattern. And so these are examples like type 1, their sabotage pattern is called rigidity. But the type 7, which is my personality type, the sabotage pattern is self-medication.
Mm.
The type 4 sabotage pattern is melancholy. It's like we have a go-to way of reacting. So understanding, oh, that's my sabotage behavior, you can immediately then start to catch yourself doing it, right? And the type 1 with rigidity, their body is very rigid and tense. So they can physically even notice. Self-medicating is pretty easy to catch yourself to. Oh, should I have that donut? Should I not have that donut? But just it's the impulse. Oh, I'm not okay. Let me reach for the thing. So catching yourself in the act of the sabotage pattern. And then when you look at the upper half of the mandala, it also has fields showing you how to get into the high side of your personality type, which is a more elevated consciousness, more self-loving, more accepting. If you were to be in this frame of mind, you would switch out of the sabotage pattern and into this instead. And so I have sort of specific instructions for every type on how to shift it. So for example, that type 1 with rigidity, they want to move out of rigidity and they want to get into acceptance. Instead of saying, no, it must be just so, the way it is not good, it's not right, it needs to change, you would shift into, I accept things the way they are. It's okay that it's in a flawed state right now. I can still feel peaceful even though things are messy right now. So it's a shift in belief that self-medicating sabotage pattern, for example, shifts into holding still and going deep instead of having to get out of this feeling right now by escaping it with something that makes me feel better, which doesn't have to be drugs and alcohol, PS. It can be, but it could be shopping, it could be sex, it could be food, it could be lots of feel-good impulses. But you're going to shift into, I'm going to sit here and breathe through this thing. I'm going to let this be here. I'm going to feel it until it dissipates and move through it instead of running away from it. So they're not easy, right? I mean, it's really asking you to sit with the discomfort you're trying to escape with your pattern.
Yeah. What
But
is
that is
your
the way
website?
through.
What's your website where every people can, because I didn't hear it, or I'm not sure if I missed it or if you just were talking
I don't
quickly.
think I gave the site. If you'd like
Yeah.
to find out your personality type, you can go to what'smypersonalitytype.com. And it's a free quiz. It's very simple. And you'll get it. It's quite a long page describing a lot of different aspects of yourself, both the primal persona and what I call the vitality personality.
Is
And
that
with
like a
working with
secondary?
a lot of women who are from the baby boomer age,
Sure.
and many of us were brought up very rigidly. Okay,
Yes.
this is who
Hmm.
we're supposed to be. Even if you don't want to be that person, that's who you're supposed to be. And
Right.
finding that there are so many unhappy women who are 50 and up.
Hmm. Hmm.
They want to give themselves that ability to change,
Yeah.
but they're afraid if they change, they're going to lose family, friends, and the connections that they've built. And
Correct.
I try to remind them that you don't have to get rid of them. Okay. You just have to find a way to accept who they are while you make the changes that make you feel happier. And I started doing that about 12 years ago.
Hmm.
I didn't realize how unhappy I was until my son, who I kept telling him he was an unhappy soul, he looked at me and he goes, "You're the depressed one. Find something to smile about." And it was like,
Okay.
oh wow, my word's coming back.
Uh-huh.
But that's how I did it. And almost like you said, I'm so rigid, but I can be in that rigid moment and say, it's okay. I can be here. Doesn't mean
Yes.
I have to change 100%, but I have to change how I react to it. And I think that's what you're telling people, that you're not going to wave a magic wand and be a new person tomorrow.
Correct. Correct. It takes work. So that survival programming is the default. When you're not noticing and when you're not making an effort, that's what's happening. So that's the automatic. If you want something different than that, it takes effort. You have to be present, you have to practice at it. It doesn't just happen overnight. But the good news is you start seeing positive outcomes almost immediately. As soon as you start trying it differently, the universe kind of opens up for you and you start feeling very inspired and encouraged to keep going. I think it's a great point what you were saying about, is my life locking me into being this person? I've been this way, and that's how all of these relationships are set up. And so if I change, what does that mean for everything else? But what you will find is that the changes you're being invited to make are to become more loving, more accepting, more patient, more willing. That's pretty likable. Other people like that stuff. Nobody's going to reject you for accepting them better, right? And being less rigid, or like the seven, no one's going to dislike that you've decided to be more present instead of running away, So in general, it feels really good to be this person, and other people like that person better. Where you're going to find the problems are in the toxic dynamic relationships, the ones where they don't actually want you to be happy. They aren't looking for peace. They like a fight. I mean, sometimes once you decide, I would really like to be happy and I'm going to start acting like a happy person, there might be some unhappy people around you who are like, what? That's not how we do it. You were supposed to be grumpy together. This only works if we're both unhappy. And I guess you get to decide then if that is a relationship you want to hold on to. Not everybody can receive love, and that comes out of childhood and learned messaging, and different people are at where they're at. But what I'm teaching is growth for sure. It's inviting growth. So sometimes we do grow out of relation. If our people don't want to grow too, uh, it does threaten things. But there's definitely something more positive ahead of you. If you're exiting out of something toxic because you would like to be happier, then you are now at a higher wavelength that's going to bring you happiness that looks completely different.
Yeah, I think that that is at the heart of why, uh, some people call it the U shape of happiness, how we get happy as we get older. And I'm also a geek gerontologist, which means I geek out on gerontology, aging theory. And there's a beautiful aging theory called socio-emotional selectivity theory. And what it was created by this really interesting woman. I think it's interesting that she's a woman. She was a young woman when she came up with this theory. And she had been in a car accident and it was a terrible car accident. So she was in the hospital, and like she saw her fragility. She saw that she could die. And she was
Mm,
with some older women. You know how you have to share a hospital room. So she
mm.
came up with this idea that as you see your death, as you see your time is going to be limited, you're going to be more selective. You're not going to take on those toxic relationships. You're going to be like, you know what?
I don't
I'm
have
not
time
going
for
to
this.
yeah, my patterns. And it comes back to the patterns. Like you're saying, I'm going to let go of these patterns because I want the higher pattern. I do not want these other ones that are dragging me down. And it's really interesting. She's tested it out. Anyway, you don't have to geek out with me, but it's something that there's a lot of research on. She's not as well known.
Uh-huh.
I know you love Brene Brown. She's not as well known as Brene Brown. She is in the geeked out gerontology crowd that I like to hang out with. She's a giant, but most people, she's not known. But I think her theories are really interesting. She's tested them out. Even on COVID, she found that older people could, in general, had a better attitude. And I saw that with my parents, oh, well, whatever. But young people had a harder time because it was, just that idea that, okay, I'm not going to let this get me down because I might only have 5 or 10 years to live. Whereas a young person is like, is this going to go on forever?
Yeah.
Exactly.
All
Well,
this
I mean,
toxicity.
your immune function in general is greatly impacted by your level of happiness. The if you can think about happiness as how much light are you holding in your body, how much energy, how much oomph, the happier you are, sort of the more open you are to energy flowing through you. You have a lot of power to renew your cells, to attract outcomes. You have more magnetism. You just have access to more thriving when you are happy. When you are bitter, resentful, jealous, angry, fearful, that is really kind of closing access to your own light. And that is what keeps you weak and it keeps your cells not fully functioning. So, to my mind, because I'm into energy medicine, it's always about energy. And you can think of your joyfulness level as the degree to which your body can operate at its maximum.
Oh, I love that. Did you have a question or something, Karen?
Well, I was thinking about a couple of weeks ago, I was visiting my younger son. He just moved to Indiana, and he had these great plans of things that we were going to do together. And so I went there with certain expectations, but also saying if they don't happen, it's okay, which is not normally like me.
Mm,
And as it turns out, we didn't do a lot, and we sat in his apartment a lot, but I kept hearing this voice in my head saying, it's okay. We're together. We're having conversations. We're
yeah.
taking time for ourselves. And it was that breakthrough that I've been now using in my coaching saying, sometimes we have to fight those demons that we've had inside of us for so long. Because 10 years ago, if I would have gone to visit him, I would have been let's go here, let's go there, let's make use of this time. And instead, I could look at it and say, we are making use of the time. How wonderful is this? When I came back home, a friend of mine said to me, so what all did you do? And I said, we spent time together. And it was like an epiphany. Yeah, you don't have to be doing to be happy. It
Wonderful.
can, it can come to you. And that's what I loved about your bio. And I wanted to share it with Elise because there are so many people who are holding on to only way for me to be happy is if I make money. The only way for me to be happy is if my husband tells me 20 times a day that he loves me or whatever it is. We have
Right.
this vision, and when that doesn't perform for us, we convince ourselves, well, I'm unhappy.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, you're really highlighting a major area where we make ourselves unhappy, which is attachment and expectations to outcomes or to other people. We've decided we know best how all of this is supposed to go. And if anybody does it different or life does it different, then we're upset and maybe there's an argument, and all because we were so certain we knew how it was supposed to go best. But again, can you see how that's attached to survival? That's like, I'm not going to be okay unless it goes this way. And so you're describing an example of how it didn't go the way you thought, and it was still okay. And that's really what we need to learn is we don't know how things are supposed to go. Nobody knows how things are supposed to go. There is possibly a higher power that has a design, but we really aren't in charge of any of that. But it is a benevolent world. It is a loving world. And if you just trust and surrender, you're going to receive the outcome that is best for you. And it's going to touch you in a new way. It's going to teach you something different than you've ever learned before. I love the example that you're giving because all that attachment to doing, you finally got an experience of being, and you can see
Exactly.
how deep that is, how a deeper connection being is than doing, and we almost never allow it.
I love that too. It's a great story. And yeah, so many times we go on a trip and we're just trying to pack it all in and just distracting ourselves, whether or not we're with loved ones, friends, whoever, but spending time together is very powerful. I have a question. Oh, I actually want to ask, have you read the book? It's called Let Them by Mel Robbins.
No, but I follow her. I've been hearing her quotes from her Let
It's
Them book.
cool. It kind of reminds me of what we're talking about. I just started that with my book club, and
Uh-huh, uh-huh.
it is really cool because it is all about this letting go. And not that far into the book, but it seems like it's touching on like what can you do and what are the sort of pitfalls, which I'm sure each of us
Yeah.
have our special one, which is part
Well,
of
I
our
mean, I
personality.
find it interesting because I have never met Mel Robbins. I don't know for sure what her personality type is, but based on what I see, I would type her as a type 8, which is the most forceful personality type. The vitality personality name is the leader.
Hmm.
The primal persona name is the bully. And that bully personality on their mandala, the issue is control.
Hmm.
And what is the solution, the switch we need to make? It's allowing. And so I really like that she has arrived for herself, that, she's describing her own journey of having been controlling and really caring about how other people are doing things. And that when she started allowing, which is let them, right? Her life got a lot easier. And so
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
another example. Of walking that journey yourself and realizing, no, I'm doing this to myself with my own attitudes and my own beliefs. I'm in my own way. And when I just relax and let things flow, that's the best way.
Yeah. You got the book and well, I haven't read the whole thing, but I think that's absolutely true. And she's tapping into something I think that a lot of people are going through as well.
Hmm.
Different ways. Even I'm sure other personality types need to let go in different ways. And I can relate to her book, and I'm definitely not the type A. There might be a part of me that is. And that leads to my next question, which is you mentioned that we have like, I don't remember the words you used, but it was like a primary and a secondary or something like that. And it seems I also study Indian medicine, which has like you have your, I call it the blueprint or the fingerprint. There's a lot of Eastern tradition where, with elements and you type people different than the Enneagram, but I think they're all valid.
Hmm.
Question is, how does that primary, like, you know, we're dominant in one thing, and then there's something that's we also have myself fully. It's hard for me to be a bully, but I have had chances. I've had times when I've been a real brat. People are shocked by that, but yeah, when I was a teenager, that part came out. So tell us about the primary and the secondary, or whatever words you use,
Well,
if
I'm
there
trying
is
to think,
one.
what's that?
If there is one, maybe I didn't hear you correctly, but
Yeah,
sometimes we have something that's really and then a little.
yeah, so there are a couple of different areas where that is the case. I would first start off by saying you have a primary personality type, and it's likely you have what's called a wing, which is you're sharing traits with your neighbor type. So if you took this personality type says 1 through 9, there's just 9 types and they're numbered 1 through 9, and it's not a hierarchy. It's not like one number is better than another. The number on either side of that, of your number, you might share traits with. So if I'm a type 7, I might have some type 6, or I might have some type 8. The type 8 is that leader bully I just described. I've got about 49% of that. I'm a type 7 with a lot of type 8, not so much type 6. So that really changes how this type seems. Sometimes you don't always recognize yourself in the description of your type because you are such a blend. So it's worth looking into what are the types on either side of my type. And if you were a 9, your wings could be an 8 or a 1. It's like it's in a circle. So that's something to look at. And then there is also something called your arrows, which point to other types that you take on their traits in specific times, times of stress and times of growth. You take on one arrow as your primary, which is your stress. You tend to, when you're under duress, you also start taking on the duress behavior of this other type. And when you're in a time of stability and growth, you're moving towards the high side of this other type. And that's your secondary because we tend to be in our grumpy side a lot more than our growth side. So I would say one arrow is primary and the other is secondary.
Nice. So it sounds like it's on a continuum for the most part, and then we might take on something. Does it change over our life, like from youth to the like you said, the childbearing, or I would say the middle of life, adult life, older adults. Does it change or is it pretty stable?
I would say the core personality type is always your type. Um, Really and then different life events do bring out, I think, different aspects where that bully side that I was saying I have a lot of, I didn't really meet her until I became an entrepreneur. I didn't really know that I had that in me until I became the boss, right, of a company. And now other people are out there with my name on the door and they're acting a certain kind of way. And I'm furious, right? And I am suddenly becoming very controlling about how other people are behaving because I'm feeling like it reflects on me. But I never was like that before. So I felt like that wing really came out in the years that I went into business for myself. Um, but ultimately, I think what really changes over time is getting to know yourself better and learning how to meet your own needs better, how to ask to have your needs met, how to make changes. I mean, as we were talking about before, you get to a certain age where you're just really over it. You're just kind of sick of doing it the way other people wanted you to do or the way you've always done it, when it always leads to this mess. And so once you decide I'm ready to be happy and I'm ready to start making choices for myself instead of for other people, then you're moving into the high side of your own type. Each of the personality types has a higher side and has a highest purpose. And I believe that's actually why we are here with this personality. We came here to be a certain kind of person because we came here to contribute in a certain kind of way. And once you recognize, I have this special ability, I have this special calling, I have this special talent, that makes you really happy to live aligned with that. The more you can lean in to who you really came here to be, the happier and more fulfilled you are, and the more relaxed and accepting and kind you are towards other people. And so it really is a ladder of consciousness that we move up and down based on how stressed are we.
You know, I
That
I heard a couple of words along the way that people might like get upset about: rigid, controlling, bully.
Hmm.
And those might be our personality types, but it doesn't mean that it's all bad. Okay. There are
Right.
reasons for them. I remember when I took my first personality test, I was working at a college and we were giving it to all the students. And administration said, okay, you're all going to take it. And I took it. And um, I was so upset because it said I was compulsively rigid. And it's like, no, I sit back, I wait for things. I don't just always jump in and I do what everybody else wants. But then once I started thinking about it, it was like, yeah, I'm sitting here saying, I don't like what they're doing. It should be
Yes.
done this way. And but once I understood it, it was like, but sometimes there's a reason for being rigid. And it's okay. But you know what? If you're rigid all the time, then you don't have the chance to hear what you're saying, what Elise is saying, what's going on outside. And so, I hope those who are listening realize, you know, when you take this test, and I'm hoping everybody does, because I'm going to go out and take it myself, let's not get hung up on, oh, I don't want to be that person. Okay. But when does that personality fit you? When does
Yeah.
it create?
Well, it's a great point. I really appreciate you
and
saying it because um, my quiz is it's equal. It's fair. It's right down the middle. You're going to receive the equal amount of information about how you're awesome and how you've got stuff that's in your own way. And it does take a certain degree of maturity and willingness to be able to hear that. My quiz does not tell you which Disney princess you are, It's
Darn.
yeah, we all want to read the flattering side. Unfortunately, it's the less flattering side that is the obstacle. And so I do feel that it's important to recognize this stuff in yourself, but it's not about hating it, feeling ashamed of it, not wanting to see it. It's just as you say, it's only there when you're triggered. It's only really going on when you're under duress, is when you're at your worst. I mean, we all recognize that when if you've got financial money and your financial problems and your husband's cheating on you and your kid just got suspended, are you in a good mood today? Are you being and light to everyone around you? No, you're not, because you're upset and you're just trying to get through. So it's actually having compassion for once you realize, oh, I have been this way, or oh, I am in this, then the next step is saying, so what's going on for me? Am I okay? How much duress am I actually under? Lots of times we're not that self-aware that we're not okay. So it's more about loving yourself than criticizing yourself.
Yep.
I'm wondering, is the personality type also, it has, I want to say, the good side, is it beneficial? What are the benefits? Is there benefits? And then when we get triggered, we have the drawbacks. Could you say a little bit about that, if that's true, like the positive aspects of that trait? Because that's what I find about each
Yes.
personality.
Excellent. Yes, really, you do want to know about the high side of your personality type because that's how you came here to contribute. That's who you really came to be. So, this is when you feel self-love, when you feel empowered, when you believe in your own abilities, you are able to deliver a certain kind of genius that's built into your personality type that none of the other types really have to offer. It's your wheelhouse, especially. And this is your moneymaker. This could be your career. It doesn't have to be your career. You may be, for example, type 9, the high side is named the healer. That does not mean you must have a medical degree if you are a type 9. It's that your energy is healing to other people. The type 9 is a very calm, peaceful, kind, generous natured person. They're very accepting, non-judgmental. It's so healing to be in the presence of someone else who lets you be who you are, who forgives you, who understands you, who accepts you. And I mean, that's really Christ-like, actually, right? To be unconditionally accepting and loving. So that is the type 9 when they are stable, when they feel safe, when they are safe enough to feel present because they have a sabotage pattern of kind of shutting down and just sort of withdrawing from everybody. And then they're not being that healer type, right? And then they're not showing up for their people. So it's not that you need to go out and earn a degree in order to turn into, it's just by moving into self-love, self-trust, self-acceptance, you are able to be fully present for other people and draw on your natural strengths that contribute to life. They make your own life better and they make everybody else's life better when you can lean into your genius.
Beautiful. Um, I don't know if you have any more questions, Karen, but I have one more question about aging. Is there something else you can draw out about how knowing our personality helps us age? Maybe even in our, social network. We touched on that. Like, especially if you want to change as you grow older, people might view you in a certain way, and changing may be harder. And sometimes it is harder. It is usually harder to change as you age. Just a little bit about that.
So you're asking I don't know, I totally understood the question. If as you're
Yeah, I'm just
aging,
wondering, I was trying to think of different ways that we might be more triggered as we age. We did already talk about how we might just want to let go of those toxic relationships, but there also might be some people that feel like, I believe Karen was talking about some of the women that she works with feeling kind of, I'm saying trapped in their life by what they've created. And actually,
Hmm.
Mel Robbins has a kind of cool, in the book, she talked about like how it's, you have your life is like a spider web with dew, and you start to shake it and the dew comes off. So that image stuck in my mind. Um, I'd say it's almost like there's, the higher self, we could start to go towards that in life. So my question is, how do we go towards the higher side in life rather than the triggers? Because as we age, sometimes we can get mired in those triggers. That is one thing that happens. And I think as Karen and I both are working with older adults and women, especially that are aging, that we encounter that. So how
Yeah.
can we use the Enneagram? It's a long question.
Yeah, I think one of the big problems in our culture is that aging is seen as unwelcome and unattractive and unwanted. I mean, it's like you're losing your shelf life as you age or don't have value anymore. But I hope we all recognize that that's total BS. Like you have the most to offer with as you acquire wisdom. So first and foremost is not to buy in to the belief that I'm expiring. I'm nobody wants me anymore. I don't have anything to offer anymore. I just had this conversation with my mom, who's in her 70s, and she was saying, I feel like I'd like to be doing something, but I don't know if I have anything to offer anymore. And I said, Mom, you have so much to offer. I mean, she's a type 2, which is that giver, helper, altruist type. And what organization would not appreciate a volunteer who is really committed to being of service and to being available to help? I mean, does help age out? Do I not want help just because you're a certain age anymore? So I think really that's fear. That's fear, right? That I'm not valuable anymore. I don't have worth anymore. So that again, returning to what have I learned? What am I proud of about myself? What have I acquired over time? This is what I have to offer, even if it's just more patience than I used to have, even if it's just giving more quality time, that being more present. That is an enormous gift that you have to give other people. And so don't talk yourself into that, a few wrinkles means I don't have value anymore. And really understanding that actually you're a very powerful being. The more wisdom that you hold, the more powerful you are. And understanding that you have something to offer, again, opens that heart and keeps you strong and vital.
I really believe that if more aging adults would practice that, the rest of the world would be more accepting. You know, I mentioned to my brother not too long ago, I just celebrated my 75th birthday, and he called me up and he goes, my baby sister is 75. And I said, you know, I always thought of our Aunt Jean as being this very old lady. And he goes, well, she sort of was. And I said, not her whole life, but I remember her as being that way. And he goes, yeah. And I said, I was afraid I was always going to be like her. I don't know why, but that's what I saw. And approaching my birthday, I looked in the mirror and I said, I'm nothing like her.
Yeah.
Okay. And not that she was a bad person, she wasn't, but that's not the image I want for myself or for younger people as they grow older. And to your mother, there's something that she's done in her life that maybe she wants to do better or do differently. And now's the time to do it because we don't know what tomorrow brings.
Absolutely.
I love
Absolutely.
that because what you're talking about, Karen, and also Candice, is the identity piece, which our identity is going to shift as we age, right? And the culture, just call it the culture, it has these ideas about what is our identity as we age. And if we don't have those role models, then it can really I don't know how it works with the personalities. But it does make us go towards the triggers because we're like, oh, this must be bad, 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 instead of looking for the good things, reflecting. And I was reminded of, I don't know if anyone's ever read the Blue Zone, the original Blue Zone book.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, if you remember, there was a lady, I believe she was Mormon, and or no, well, anyway, she was in the US. Oh, no, Loma Linda, because it's the Seventh-day Adventist. Sorry, not Mormon, Seventh-day Adventist. And I think she's like 100, over 100 years old. And her perception of herself was she was helping older people, but they were like in their 70s or 80s and 90s. She didn't perceive herself as an older, frail person. She was just like, I got to get these magazines. She was like driving in this big car. I just always love that story because her self-perception was how she felt and being connected probably to that giver. She was like
Yeah.
volunteering for all the older homes, older,
Yeah.
facilities where they needed volunteers. And that always touched me. And you reminded me of that. So yeah, I would say for me, let's take this personality test. Everyone listening, when you have a moment, don't do it when you're driving, of course, but let's all take this personality test and then really lean into what is that higher self and let go of those um, pieces of identity that you might have picked up along the way that make you think you should, you're gonna contract. Because I love that you were speaking to that expansion and how much wisdom we have. Any final words, Candice or Karen? This has been such a fun discussion.
Thank you so much. I just want to remind everybody that your happiness is your highest priority, and there is not a value higher than that. All nine personality types, well, no, all 8 out of 9 personality types put their happiness behind some other value, that there's some other value that they hold higher than their happiness. So they're going to sacrifice happiness in favor of this other thing. And what I'd like to go on the record to say is that actually your own happiness as your highest priority is what serves the world best. It what's make you your most powerful. It makes you your most kind and patient and accepting. When you make yourself happy, you make everybody around you happy. And that is living in the flow, and that is having real vitality.
Wonderful.
Fire, fire, just very powerful. Thank you so much for being
Thank
with us
you.
today. That was quite a closer.
Thank you for having me.
Well, it was another great How to Super Age with Elise Marie Collins and her guest, Candice Thomas. Candice's information will be in our show notes. So please, don't worry. Go back to the show notes, find the information, and let's all take her quiz. I can't wait. Have a great day, everybody. Bye bye now.